We wheel them and we turn them and we rock them and we sound them and we tempo them and last the rhythm sweet.
Hi guys, welcome back to the Riddim Suite. I'm your host Felicia Renee, and today we'll be giving you a day in the life of a Congresswoman, Yvette D. Clarke. Welcome back, guys. We're sitting here with the phenomenal Yvette D. Clarke, who is a Congresswoman for the 9th District in New York.
That's correct.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're so very welcome. So now, when you say 9th District, what does that cover?
So my district is the only district in the state of New York that is wholly contained in the borough of Brooklyn.
Really?
I start at what they would call Atlantic Avenue, where the Barclays Center is, and I move south to Sheepshead Bay. So we call it from Atlantic to Atlantic. From Atlantic Avenue to the Atlantic Ocean.
I love that.
And then east-west from Park Slope to Brownsville.
So when someone
Central
says
and South Brooklyn.
you are Brooklyn, you can say yes.
I am.
I am Brooklyn.
I have a t-shirt, as a matter of fact, that says,
Really?
I'm so Brooklyn.
Because you are that. I mean, when people think about Brooklyn, those are the places that they think about.
Absolutely.
So then let's jump right into your Caribbean roots. So how would you say that your Jamaican background has influenced your position as a Congresswoman?
Wow. Well, it's home training, right? Upbringing. It's just who I am. I'm a Jamaican American. I don't have the accent, but I definitely eat the food. And I understand patois very well.
Really?
Yes.
You can give it some patois?
I can fake it.
Fake it.
I can fake it.
Fake it for me.
I
now.
can fake it. Just a bit. For Americans, it sounds like patois.
Right,
to
right.
Jamaicans, I sound like a Yankee. I'm suspect. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love that. So then tell us about your journey to being a Congresswoman. Is this something you always wanted to do?
It's not.
Really?
It is not. So I will share with you how things sort of progressed. And it really had to do, again, with my home and family. Your audience may be acquainted with my mother, the Honorable Dr. Una S.T. Clarke,
Right.
CD.
Absolutely.
And my father's Leslie Clarke Sr. And my parents were activists, and they came to the United States during a time of great change in the United States. And during that time, their way of navigating the United States was to involve themselves in the causes that were making a difference in the lives of people of African descent. So they came in the early to mid 50s, and during the 60s in the United States of America, the civil rights movement was taking place, voting rights were a major struggle, and my mother, the Honorable Dr. Una Clarke, was right in the thick of it. She was a foreign student, so she traveled to the South to help in the movement there. And we looked at, they looked at the surroundings here in Brooklyn and wanted to make sure that my brother and I received the very best public education that we could receive, because they weren't wealthy people, they were immigrants. And just being able to navigate all the systems, health care for my brother and I, making sure that our education was the best that it could possibly be, organizing neighbors so that we looked after one another. My mother was a block association president.
Wow.
So it was all of her activism that I think resided with me. Taking me with her to all of the organizing meetings that were taking place. She didn't have a babysitter, so most of my time was spent going to these meetings. So being in that environment where people were organizing, talking through strategies, addressing the concerns that they had for themselves and their children, just abided with me for a while. I was a science student, very much into the sciences. I was considered a nerd because of that. But I always had the passion for community, because aside from my interest in science, I was interested in what was happening in our community. We also were coming up during a time where black people, people of African descent, were asserting themselves in the arts, in just about every sphere of life. And my mom engaged in all of that. So we went to the theater, all of that created an environment that built an affinity for the people that I now currently represent. But when I went away to college, as I went to school in Ohio, there was an activism on campus. And while I was supposed to be in science lab, I was protesting the investment of my college in South Africa.
Oh my goodness.
And part of the anti-apartheid movement. That led me to really go into the space of learning more about government and public policy. So I ended up changing my major and taking that coursework, which then opened up a whole new sort of field of endeavor for me. And my goal was to come back to the community in which I was born and raised and help build organizational strength to meet the needs of the people who lived here. And that's what I did. I started out working not too far from here at a storefront nonprofit, very small community-based nonprofit that worked with the tenants in this area who were oftentimes being taken advantage of by landlords, organizing them. That's where I got my feet wet. And then from there, my career just continued to evolve. I had the opportunity to serve with or work for two very distinguished elected officials, both of whom were black women. In a parallel track, my mom was becoming more prominent in terms of the work that she was doing in our community, eventually going on to be elected at the municipal level in our New York City Council, being the first foreign-born woman to be elected. So all of these things were happening around me, and it was just a number of circumstances that came together that ultimately led me to elective office.
That's amazing. And
It
your
is.
story is so inspiring.
It is.
So now, what would you say inspires you?
Wow, there's so many things. I'm inspired by the history of people of African descent. The fact that we've persevered in multiple societies under incredible odds to become prolific writers, professionals across the board, and despite the obstacles that have been placed before us, we've been able to achieve, overcome, and really excel. That motivates me to do all I can to bring down as many barriers as I can, and to create a space where this nation, the nation that I was born and raised in, becomes a nation that it's true to its word and true to its constitution and true to its values. And that's what drives me every day. And I have a very diverse constituency. You would think the way that I speak that it's all people of African descent. It's not. It's a multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-religious district. What we have in common, I believe, is the desire to see our families do well, to see the next generation take up the mantle of leadership and run with it, use all of their talent, skill, and ability to achieve their ultimate potential. And that, I get a charge from that. I get a charge from creating policy, amending policy, challenging the status quo, because I believe that this is a very unique nation in its ability to do good to its own people, and by extension, do good to people around the world.
Now, you mentioned breaking barriers. For me, I know personally, seeing you as a woman and a Caribbean woman in the position that you are in, there are not many women in that position. How do you feel in terms of other people looking to you saying, my goodness, Yvette Clarke, she's amazing, and I aspire to be her? Like, how do you feel when you hear things like that?
It's a sense of pride for me. It really does. It really does engender a sense of pride for me. Being born and raised in Brooklyn, I never could have imagined that I would have been given this sacred trust. And having that opportunity, I feel it's my obligation to demonstrate to young women across Brooklyn, around the world, that if you're passionate enough about what you like to do, what comes natural to you, that you can excel in it. And it doesn't have to be someone who's in elective office. Whatever your passion is, if you can follow that, be true to that, not let anyone dissuade you from that, you can be successful. I mean, it was no cakewalk for me to be elected to Congress. It was no cakewalk for me to be elected to the New York City Council and then succeed my mother. It's a double-edged sword, I tell people. For some reason, though we've had, in many cases, families of doctors who raised doctors, families of lawyers who've raised lawyers, there was somewhat of a few folk out there who were like, well, what do you think this is, a family business? What do you think, you're royalty? And I said, no one said that to the Kennedys, right? No one said that to the Bushes, but I had to prove my mettle. And I think it was my passion that came across to the people that I represent. And then just being attentive to the work that is before me has kept me in good stead with my constituency.
We'll be right back. Hi guys, welcome back to the Riddim Suite. I am your host, Felicia Renee. The Riddim Suite aims to promote and propagate Caribbean businesses, entrepreneurs, and artists in and around New York City.
At the core of who I am is that I am Jamaican.
When you're in a culture that is free and at ease.
Caribbean people have this natural vibe, this natural,
My favorite is oxtail rice.
The coconut.
With the dumpling and
Let's not talk about food. We are currently looking to feature additional individuals. So if you or someone you know fits the criteria, don't hesitate to reach out.
And boy, the Riddim Suite.
The Riddim Suite.
The Riddim Suite.
The Riddim Sweet, 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 sweet.
The Riddim Suite.
The Riddim Suite.
We wheel them and we turn them and we rock them and we sound them and we tempo them and laughs the Riddim Suite.
Tell us a little bit about your role as a congresswoman. What do you do?
Wow. Okay, so I am the representative for the people of the 9th District. There are 435 of us in the House of Representatives, and I represent a very specific constituency. With the exception of some recesses, which we're in the midst of one right now, we're in Washington every week. And every now and then we get a week off. So I travel between New York and Washington, D.C. on a weekly basis. In Washington, D.C., that's where my legislative work takes place. That's where we look at the federal budget and ways in which to impact the communities that we represent. It's a group endeavor. And when we have, like in Jamaica, you have an opposition party. We have an opposition party. I'm in the opposition right now. My party is in the minority. That would be the equivalent, let's put it that way.
Okay.
Though our president is from my party, the way that our government works is that each representative has to go to its own constituency. So the constituency gets to choose between parties. So we don't make a president by the number of members that are in the body, and so there's no one leader from each party. That's
a little bit.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult to understand.
Is,
We have a
yeah.
presidential as opposed to a parliamentary system.
I see. So then, where does your position lie? So there's a president, vice president, and then the Congress people?
No. In the United States of America, this is what is very important for people to understand. We have 3 co-equal branches of government. There is the presidency, there is the legislature, and then there's the court.
Right.
So there's nothing that our president can do by himself.
Right.
We have to originate all of the laws of the United States. He can give us guidance on what agenda he wants to pursue. But the legislation itself is actually drafted by the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. We have to agree that this is the direction we want to go. We then send it to the president. He has to agree with what we've agreed to. Then he signs it into law.
So then the president is a partner of yours.
A partner.
Oh, beautiful.
That's the best way to describe it.
You are up there, Congresswoman.
Well, me and like 434 other people.
That's something to aspire to. And
Yeah.
it's wonderful. It's beautiful.
Well, it's a unique and peculiar occupation, is what I call it.
But what's crazy for me is that just about every event in and around New York City that I go to, you're there. So how is it that you're in DC and you're in New York?
When I have the opportunity to be in my constituency, I'm in my constituency.
Wow.
I rarely take vacations because I'm away so frequently that people forget that when they elect you to Congress, they're electing you to go away. So when I come back, they're like, "Where you been? We haven't seen you." I was like, if I'm not in Washington, I'm not doing my job for you.
Right.
So I have to go. So I try to come back, share my insights with the constituency, get feedback from them on legislation that may be before us, find out what issues are impacting them here in the constituency that I can legislate on in Washington, D.C., so that we're partners here at the local level.
We'll be right back.
We wheel them and we turn them and we rock them and we sound them and we temper them and laughs the rhythm sweet.
I know it cannot be an easy road. So can you speak to your biggest challenge thus far?
Wow. I face challenges just about each and every day, because you're balancing who Yvette is with Congresswoman Clarke, with candidate Clarke. There's so many different arenas that I find myself in. I was in the supermarket yesterday, which is walking distance from my home, and the young lady who was checking me out, she said, "Are you Yvette Clarke? You do your own grocery shopping?" I said, if I don't do it, I don't eat.
And you drive yourself? I
drive myself.
Wow.
Absolutely. So it's just balancing all of the roles and responsibilities that I have to others and to myself. That is the ultimate challenge. I believe in what I do. I believe in righteousness. I believe in humanity, and I'm willing to fight for it. I tell people my work is a labor of love, and because it is, I don't feel the challenges are insurmountable.
Right.
I go at them head on, because that's what I had to do in order to become a congresswoman. If I had let any trepidation stand in the way,
you wouldn't be here.
I wouldn't be here.
What advice would you give to somebody who maybe not a congresswoman or a congressperson, but just to walk in your footsteps? What advice would you give that person?
Well, I can tell you a couple of things that I think helped me along the way. Being raised in two worlds. My parents coming to the United States with Caribbean values and raising me with those values in the United States of America, where everyone's not raised the same, going through a period of time where I was like, this is America. In America, kids get to go out and party. Kids get to do this and that and the other.
Right.
And my parents standing firm on their values made all the difference in the world. Now, when I was a kid, I didn't appreciate it as much as I do now, but it was what my parents poured into me and my brother that I think has anchored me in who I am, so that when the day comes and I'm no longer Congresswoman Clarke, I'm still going to be looking for ways to add value to my life and everyone else's. If you can find that person that can anchor you in that way, those people that can anchor you in that way, and it may not be immediate family, it's an invaluable resource. And oftentimes, we don't recognize that what makes us great is what other people pour into you. So that if people pour into you, you're no good, you won't amount to anything, you begin to internalize that, and you miss your blessings, you miss your dreams. But when that confidence is built in you, and you find people who will continue to support you in what you do, the sky becomes the limit. And so that's what I would say is surround yourself with individuals who are willing to pour into you words of encouragement, of success. They may not be wealthy, and oftentimes, particularly those of us who are of immigrant background, we're not coming from wealth, right? But look at how we're able to excel with those values. That to me is phenomenal.
Why do you love your position?
Why do I love my position? It's giving back. I was the beneficiary of the village that raised the child. And I have the honor and privilege of representing the very community in which I was born and raised, in which I went to public school, in which my neighbors who were a part of that rearing process still reside. I think the voice that I provide is a unique one in that it's reflective of a Black American. It's reflective of a Caribbean American. It's reflective of a Black woman, a Caribbean American woman. It's reflective, and when you look at that demographic and you go to Congress, they're very few and far between.
Right.
And so I have the ability to influence the lives of many people. I've taken it upon myself to look after the Caribbean region and the relationships that the United States has with that region. Of course, I have a fondness for the island of Jamaica. However, I see us all as cousins, essentially. I think that I can be influential in building bridges that perhaps people in a generation before me were unable to build or started building but didn't complete. And I want to begin, I want not to begin, but I want to continue on that work. I want to force this nation to live up to its values, to live up to its word. And that's why I love what I do. I'm a fighter. My grandmother was born in a compound town, Maroon Town. So I'm from the same bloodline as Nanny of the Maroons. I love to fight. I live to fight. That's what we do. That's what we do. But we do it because we love. I do it because it's a labor of love. When it's no longer a labor of love, I'll know it's time for me to give up, to step down. I'm Congresswoman Yvette Clarke of the 9th District of New York and the Riddim Suite.